everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Doominal Crossing. Doom, how are you, my friend?
Doing pretty good. It has been a wild week, Andy. Let me tell you.
You had
For
hinted
those who,
that it was a big week for you. I was anticipating what that might be.
and then we got looks like Zora's going to be
We
tipping
did have
out.
Zora
Not,
the cat here as a special podcast correspondent who is lying down for in the entire time we were getting ready. But now that we're live, I don't know. Maybe the
yeah.
bright
Now,
lights.
now that I'm actually talking about my life story, she's like, I'm a
Yeah.
dick now. You know,
I don't want to hear
I've
this.
had enough.
Yeah. Oh, what's going on
Yeah,
with you, Doom?
yeah. It's been a wild week. So I live in California. For those who don't know, we've been going through an absolutely insane heat wave. Sacramento, California had record-breaking, or not record-breaking temperatures, but tying the all-time hottest day in the state's history at 114 degrees. And I was visiting home during the peak of that heat wave. So let me tell you, not a good time. Not a good time.
Oof.
I was at SAC Anime though during that, and I got to meet Chris Sabat, and he autographed my sealed copy of the Metroid Prime Trilogy. I posted a photo of that in the Discord for all of you guys to check out, and that was really cool. He had a lot of fun. He sent it to. He actually was still in contact with one of the audio directors at Retro Studio, and actually sent
Nice.
him the picture after he signed it. So that was like
Did he
super
ask him
cool.
when Metroid Prime 4 the trailer's dropping or
I mean, I doubt he would know about that. I mean, Rundus is long gone. I don't think Tanabe-san is going to bring him back,
uh,
unfortunately. But it was really cool. Justice did actually prevail that day, and all that wonderful stuff. And then beyond SAC anime and Metroid stuff in my personal life, so I am an announcer for pretty much all of my college's sporting events.
mhm.
And Monterey, we have a pretty good athletics program, but we're definitely not the best in the state. But one of the best athletic programs in the state is Cal State San Bernardino. Their volleyball team this year alone is one of the top 10 teams in California, the whole state, in the CCAA. They're a ridiculously good team, and in the school's entire history, our volleyball team has never beat them. I think in total, we've taken a grand total of 4 or 5 sets off them in our total volleyball history until last night
Wow.
when the Cal State Monterey Bay Otters took their very first win against the Cal State San Bernardino Coyotes 3-2 in a tiebreaker neck and neck set, but just pulled it off in the end. And it was an incredible match to spectate and to commentate. And by extension, I am the first announcer that has ever gotten to call a win against Cal State San Bernardino in the school's history. And granted, this is not about me. Granted, I am the Lil John to the volleyball team's usher. I'm just there to hype everyone up. But it still feels great to play a small role in what's otherwise a historical moment in our school sports program. And yeah,
Congratulations, man. I think you're underselling your contributions there, Mr. Crossing. I think that as we all know in this podcasting world, sometimes a boisterous voice is what you need to take your product to the next level. And I'm sure you
maybe it
provided
was
that.
it was a wonderful night for sure. Like we had a great crowd that night. All of the DJ's music was just on point. It was so
Wow.
good to work with. It was phenomenal.
You know, I wish I had a cool story that I could share. I feel like I'm just this old dude who lives in the suburbs now, and I go and walk my dog. I don't have a cool story like that for our listeners, but I get to live vicariously through you, and I'm glad to hear that your team had some success. That's fantastic. Good job. Congrats.
Well, I can't say that all my weeks are like this. This is just an extra special one out of nowhere. So
Well, even so, very cool. Very very cool. Um, all right. Today we're going to answer some fan questions. Actually, it feels like it's been a long time since we've done that, and we had a couple questions that were submitted through our Discord channel and through Twitter and stuff, and there ain't nothing else really going on. So I want to get to those questions. But actually, we were having a conversation before we went on air, and I thought that maybe we could address it because I don't know if most people probably don't know this or not, but I'm actually going to be leaving for the next 2 shows. I'm going to be gone for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to Europe, and we were just joking how like 100% that's going to be when the Nintendo Direct is going to happen. And so this last week was kind of a whirlwind week because, and you and I kind of disagree, I think, in principle on this at the source of this information, because I don't hold much credence in this particular informant, but I think you more so do. But
I do. I think we're both biased in different directions towards our things, but yeah,
perhaps,
for sure, we definitely.
Yeah. There's three specific titles which kind of make me roll my eyes at this guy in particular, but he, to be fair, he has got some other stuff correctly, but so I thought it was so funny because like this rumored Nintendo Direct, which is rumored to be happening on Tuesday, this insider was just like, oh, you know what? It's actually getting delayed because the Queen died.
So technically, he didn't say that. That was one of his colleagues, Dan Riker, that was speculating that it might happen. And then I believe Grubb himself made a tweet that day where he's like, I'm getting reports that they're not actually going to delay the Direct. That's kind of how that whole thing went down, I think.
I got a text message from a friend of mine who I haven't talked to in like 6 months, and she was just like, hi, what's going on with Zelda? Is this Nintendo Direct happening? Is it delayed because of the Queen? Why are they related? And I was like, I don't know, man. Like, whatever. Somebody made the joke, like, what was in that Fire Emblem DLC?
Yeah, I saw that. It is pretty funny how we're speculating on an unannounced Direct getting delayed. I will say that. That is pretty spectacular.
And I thought that the icing on the cake was this insider was just like, oh, actually, the Direct is back on. It's back on. It doesn't sound like it's been delayed. So he's very smart. I'll give him that. He has essentially, like, my opinion on insiders. I think that anyone who follows Nintendo can make educated guesses about what may be released, and you could kind of hide behind the fact that, like, oh, plans change if you're wrong. But you gotta hand it to him. He's done a good job here because, like, if the Direct happens, then he was right, and if it doesn't happen, then he was also right because he said it was going to get delayed because of the Queen.
Well, again, I mean, we could talk about this more off-air and, like, in depth, but, like, at the end of the day, I think it comes to, like, track records and very specific, accurate predictions. Because, like, anyone can say, like, oh, something just entered development, and then you don't hear about it for another 4 years, and then someone can say, like, oh, well, I guess it got canceled mid-development. Like, but whereas when, individuals make very specific, accurate predictions, and I think this also goes beyond just Nintendo. When we talked about it on Twitter, I listed a bunch of stuff that wasn't Nintendo related that Grubb also predicted, and I think that's why I give a lot of credence to Grubb. But again, I am also quite biased because I'm also part of Grubb's Discord community as well. I've interacted with him. I played Halo and Fall Guys with him, so obviously I'm gonna have a positive outlook on him because I've interacted with him and I've had good social repertoire with him. So
what, that's fair. He seems like a nice enough guy.
Yeah, so keep that in mind when I talk about Grubb as well. That I am coming in this with a bias as well, and I encourage all of you watching, to do your own research and make up your own minds when looking into these claims, if that interests you.
Well, the thing about this particular insider, he seems like a nice enough guy. He seems like a fine guy to hang out with. But I feel like he's been wrong for everything that's been related to my world for like the last 4 years. Zelda, Twilight Princess, and Wind Waker HD are like a punching bag joke at this point. It's been predicted to come out for like the last 4 years. This Metroid Prime thing has been predicted. Like, so whatever. You can kind of take it for what you will. But I do think that there is probably still a better than good chance that we do have a Direct of some sorts. I think it's probably coming. It will probably be while I'm on the plane and completely unavailable. I'll have to wait until like the next day to actually see it. And I wanted to touch before we get to the fan questions, because I was kind of thinking about this, and I was, a couple of months ago we made our Nintendo Direct predictions for the the E3 Direct, or like the quote unquote E3 Direct. And at the time, I think we both said like it's time to see Metroid Prime 4. I think we're gonna see it. And now that the everything's kind of shifted a little bit, I think that if there was a Direct, Metroid Prime 4 is not going to be there.
I agree. I feel like I could see like maybe like a small, very small tease, but like even then, like
I just don't see it.
Very iffy on that.
I think that
I feel, yeah.
So there's something about, even though it was a regular Nintendo Direct and E3 wasn't happening, there's something about that time of year, like we're just conditioned to like big E3 announcements, and like that kind of felt like something where obviously we all know that Nintendo likes to show off stuff that's coming out within like the next 6 to 9 months. And I don't think Metroid Prime 4 is going to be that. But I think that they could have probably shown a teaser or something like that. I don't think that they would show that in a September Nintendo Direct. I mean, if they have a September Nintendo Direct, I literally think that like they need to just focus on like what's coming out in 2023. No, like I have no idea a single game that's coming out. Like we're kind of mapped out till November, but like I don't think we have anything after that. So they'd have to spend a long time kind of delving into those games. And of course, there's the elephant in the room named Breath of the Wild 2, which
Breath of the Wild : subtitle.
Oh God, which is still unnamed, which is crazy. Maybe you should just pick a different name if it's that much of a spoiler. I don't know, but like, so there's that big elephant in the room. But even if you remove Breath of the Wild 2, I feel like they got to show what's coming out in the next like 6 months, because like after Pokemon comes out in November, I have no idea what comes out for Nintendo Switch, and like that's 2 months away. So like I feel like there has to be something. But again, kind of typically, I feel like September Nintendo Directs have kind of been like a more low-key event. You know what I mean? Like they haven't like had blockbuster announcements like we would expect in like the June Directs or anything like that. Maybe I'm just misremembering, but
I don't know. I feel like we've had some pretty good September Directs. Yeah, Luigi's Mansion 3 was revealed in a September Direct. Majora's Mask 3D was revealed in a September Direct. I think that was just before the Switch was announced. I could be misremembering. It was around that time frame.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's been some good September Directs for sure. But in regards to Prime 4, like I agree with you, but I don't think I agree with for the same reason. It's not that I don't think Prime 4 is fit for a September Direct. I think it's more so when Prime 4 is going to come out, and I don't think it's going to be a 2023 title. I could be very wrong. I sure as hell don't know anything about this game beyond it's the fourth Metroid Prime game, and that Silex is probably going to be in it. But, you know, yeah. I feel like it's going to be 2024 at the earliest, maybe later. I'm not really feeling 2023 on this one.
I agree with you. But I guess I will say, like, even thinking that I think Metroid Prime 4 would probably have still come out in 2024, I think that if we had a Direct in June, we probably would have seen like something for Metroid Prime 4, like a sneak peek trailer or like something. But I just don't see that in the September Direct for whatever reason. So
I see them doing something. I see them doing something similar with Dread, where they'd be like, "By the way, guys, don't worry. Prime 4 is not canceled. Development's going smoothly.
Yeah.
We'll have more information to share in the future. Just be a little bit more patient." I think we're going to get another one of those.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I think that if a September Direct does happen, Metroid Prime, maybe the trilogy, maybe not. I think that is a pretty decent chance of happening. Decent enough, right? Like, I wouldn't say it's a slam dunk, but I would say, like, odds are closer to 50-50 than they are to like 80-20, you know what I mean? So I think that we might have that. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, for sure. You know my opinions on Prime Remaster. I'm pretty much riding that train to home unless we go out of that Direct without it. That's when I'm finally going to succumb. But until that Direct is over, I'm riding that hype train.
And you know, that's the thing about these this Metroid Prime trilogy rumored port, which have been rumored forever, and like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, is like, it makes sense that these games will eventually come. So like that's why these insiders keep on saying that they're coming, because like it makes sense that they should eventually come at some point. It feels like inevitable that they will. It's just a matter of when. And I don't know. I guess we'll see. But you know, we are right now recording on the 11th of September, so we you know, hopefully we don't have to wait too much longer. And you know what? If I have to be on a plane for the Nintendo Direct for everyone else to finally see Breath of the Wild 2 or Metroid Prime or whatever, I'll take it. I'll do that for you guys.
And just hope that your plane has good Wi-Fi.
Yeah, actually, no kidding. I'm gonna be playing some Zero Mission actually on the plane. I've been playing a bunch of Zero Mission the last couple weeks. I may or may not be writing a guide for it actually. So there you go. Surprisingly short game to write a guide for.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, Zero Mission is like a really short game. Like it's one of the few Metroid games that I enjoy speedrunning. That and Dread. Otherwise, I usually just take my time. But yeah.
Yeah, I think you could probably do everything that there is to do in like 2.5 hours. Like, or at least I can, and I'm not very good at it. So,
Yeah.
okay.
I was gonna say at my peak Zero mission, I've been able to 100% the game in less than 2 hours, but I
Wow.
can't do that anymore. I need to do a lot more practice to be able to do that again.
All right. So we have a bunch of just kind of random Metroid questions that our audience has asked us, and it's a slow news week, and hey, we love these shows. You guys put together the questions and the format for us. We give you our opinions. Are we ready to rock and roll, Doom?
I'm ready to go. We've been talking about directs, we've been talking about our personal lives, but we haven't talked about enough Metroid, in my opinion. So
Well, let's
I think it's
change
time
that.
to change that.
Hey, by the way, I really quickly. So we have a you know the Omega Metroid Summer of Metroid Madness character contest that we just had. So
Yeah.
that is an offshoot from Zelda Dungeon's Fall Brawl tournament that we have every year. We're going into the 4th annual Fall Brawl. And this year I made the gimmick where it was Zelda characters versus Smash Bros characters. So our girl Samus and our boy Ridley are both in this tournament over at ZeldaDungeon.net, which starts on Tuesday. If any of you guys want to head over and show them some love, I think that the Smash Bros characters are more or less going to get killed by the Zelda characters, but
I imagine there's definitely going to be a little Zelda bias, which is fair. I mean,
which is fair, yeah. But yeah, that is starting on Tuesday. So if you want to show some Metroid love, head over to ZeldaDungeon.net. It's a top pin post. All right, let's get to these questions. This is from Steph121, and they ask, would you like the concept of having only 2 or 3 beams being active at the time and select and combine them as you wish? For example, you can have the wave beam and ice beam active, but no wide beam. Maybe add an item that increases them around or amount of beams that can be active at the same time if 2 beams are too few. So essentially, I think this question is like, if you have, let's say, 20 beams, let's just throw that number out there, 20 beams, you can only stack like 4 or like 2 or 3 at a time, if I'm reading that correctly.
No, I do not want that.
No? Okay.
I think either the 2D formula where you stack everything or the Prime formula where everything is individual, but you have to strategically choose between one or the other without them stacking. I prefer one or the other. I don't think I think I haven't played Axiom Verge yet, but it kind of sounds like Axiom Verge does this thing, going back to your review, where there's a ton of weapons, but you only end up using like a select
Yeah.
few of them that are useful. And
Yeah.
I feel like if you add that many weapons into Metroid, like you kind of run into that problem. It's also one reason why I love Doom Eternal so much. Like the game has a good amount of weapons.
Yeah.
It doesn't have 20 weapons though, and every single weapon is of vital importance. There are stuff like weapon mods and stuff like that. Maybe you could do something like that with the beams, perhaps where there's like an alt fire mode and each beam has like a special ability. Perhaps I could be swayed into something like that. But in terms of like 20 beams and you combine each of them in the combos, off the top of my head, doesn't really appeal to me personally.
My initial instinct was no, and like my initial instinct was like, I think that we should have a lot of beams, and I think that we should be able to select them, even if you don't use a lot of them. Maybe somebody does, right? Like I think that more beams is better. You know what? I'm not like 100% against the idea of maybe like you can select like a main beam and like a sub beam, let's just call it, and that gives your main beam some like different properties. So for example, if you selected like the wave beam or something like that as your main kind of beam, and then you had, I don't know, let's say the plasma underneath, you would add fire effects to your beams, but like I don't know exactly how that would work, but like, you know what I mean? I'm not like completely against the idea of, or maybe there's just like, maybe you have like 5 main beams and then you have like 10 things that can augment those main beams. So like, you could have like a spacer augmentation where it shoots in threes, or like you could have, I don't know, something like that. I'm not like completely against that idea. I think that if you did, I mean, you can do anything well if you do it well, but I do think that if it's a pain in the butt to do, if it is, I don't know, like, if I had to choose, I'd rather go the classic simple route, like let's just take like 10 beams and let's just have you be able to select from them. I didn't love the idea of stacking the beams like in 2D Metroid. We saw that in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. I didn't love that. So I think I'd rather just choose from a different amount of beams. But like, I mean, that being said, like you could do it well. You know, if there are ways to do it well, but without kind of seeing a proof of concept or something like that, I think I'm with you. I think I just want like regular beams.
Yeah, exactly. I would need to see a pitch beforehand because I can't really think of how I would do that on my own.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. I love this question. This is from Dave97. Shout out to Dave. Um, the year is 2022. Do you think it's too late to re-release Samus Returns on the Switch in a post-Dread world where the game feels much slower to play? And could they charge full price for it?
So I talked about this during our definitive ranking of Samus Returns, and no, I don't think it's too late. I was pleasantly surprised how, despite the fact that I think Dread improves on just about everything that's all the new ideas that Samus Returns goes
Definitely.
for,
Yeah.
I still had an absolute blast playing that game, and I think it still very much holds up today. And yeah, I would love to have it, on the Switch. Could you charge full price for it? Absolutely not. No way.
Yes, you could. Yes. I'm pretty sure.
Nintendo would do it, but you could not do it if you wanted that game to sell. I'm just saying.
Oh, you could do. Oh, so this. Listen, I'm pretty sure that in the Discord, in our Omega Metro Discord, there's a pinned post of mine from like 2 years ago that says like Nintendo is going to re-release Samus Returns on the Switch at some point. Like, I mean, they just sent that game out to absolutely die on the 3DS, and it was like such a blunder and such a miserable mistake. It's just like, what are you thinking? Like, this is one of the most boneheaded Nintendo Metroid moments, I feel like, in the history of Metroid, which is saying something, to release this game on the 3DS instead of the Switch. So, I don't think it's too late. I think that they could easily port this game. Maybe not easily, but they could port this game. Maybe you give it a little bit of shine to kind of update the graphics and textures, and I think you release it at full price. And I think that it sells. Does it sell 3 million copies? No, I don't think it does. But it's kind of like, what would you rather have? Would you rather sell 3 million copies at $30, or would you rather sell, half that at $60, right? And I think there's merit to both sides. The more people you can expose to Metroid, the better. But I think that Nintendo would sell it for full price. I think that they could sell it for full price, and I think that they should release Samus Returns on the Switch because that game, it's a great game, and it was sent out to absolutely die, and it just feels like a weird, like, why put resources into making this game if you are releasing it when you know that, like, I guess the theory was that, like, well, a lot of people have 3DSs and like it's a install base already, but like if you look at the history of Nintendo's consoles, once that new console is out, that last console is dead. And even before that, once a new console is like announced, that last console is dead. Wii sold like 100 million of units, right? And in the year 2011, before the Wii U, that thing was dead. Nobody was playing your Wii. And I think you could say the same thing about almost every single Nintendo console. So like, it was baffling that they released it on the 3DS. It was a huge mistake, and I think that they should fix their mistake. And I think it would sell. I think it would sell well enough to justify the time and money spent porting it over. So I think they should do it.
What I would love to see Nintendo do, and I don't know if they would do something like this, because it's kind of hit or miss whether they go this route, but I think, because we both agree that at some point Mercury Steam is going to remake Metroid Fusion. Whether it's the next game or whether it's something else down the line, we both agree at some point Mercury Steam is going to remake Fusion. I could see like the Fusion remake getting a collector's edition, and part of the collector's edition bonus is like, hey, here's a simple upscaled port of Samus Returns, with Switch UI and stuff like that. I could see something like that.
Yeah, I could see that too. I would release it as like a full-fledged game, but like they got to release it in some way, in some fashion. Like put it on NSO, put it on as a pre-order bonus for Prime 4, like something. Like it makes me so flustered that they release this game to die on the 3DS. Like, what are you thinking? And not only did you release it to die, you didn't even include it in the main Nintendo Direct. You announced it at the Treehouse, for God's sakes.
I feel like the Wii U era just like totally messed up Nintendo's perception of like how people would react to certain products and what the sales would be, and like I feel like that Wii U era like almost like it made Nintendo even more out of touch with Metroid than they already were, which was already bad leading into that area.
Yeah, I think that Samus Returns releasing on 3DS might be either the I don't know if I could say the worst, but maybe the second worst thing that Nintendo's ever done with the Metroid franchise. They didn't promote it and they released it on the 3DS. I think that might be the worst thing. Or the second worst thing. I think the worst thing.
Probably,
what do you think is the worst thing?
I would put three more things on top of that. I would say not doing anything Metroid related during the N64 era. Like, I feel like you could have at least done like a side-scrolling Metroid game if you couldn't figure out how to do.
I think that's the worst thing Nintendo's ever done with Metroid is skip the
N64. Especially with Symphony of the Night, like pretty much just taking that throne during that time and taking up that conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
I also think Prime 2 should have been pushed back a little bit more. It released during that. You want to talk about a game that was sent out tonight? Prime 2. It is absolutely criminal when that game was released. The same week as Halo 2, Half-Life 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, San Andreas.
It was a
bloodbath.
I don't agree with that, because I think that the audience, especially at the time for the GameCube, was so different from all those other games. Like, so different. But I can see what you're saying.
Look at the sales of that first Prime game. I mean, until Dread, it was the highest selling Metroid game of all time. It is to this day.
It's because they have TV advertisements where some guys at a mental institute. He's like
the best GameCube seller, the first Metroid Prime game. And I'm not saying Echoes would have topped that. It probably wouldn't.
It's because they made a live action trailer for the first game and had some doofus being like in a therapist's office who's playing Metroid too much for the second one. It was horrible. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go Google the Canadian Metroid Prime 2 commercial. Horrible.
Dude, mid-2000s game ads were like wild.
Oh my god. Okay, so skipping the N64, we both agree on that. Prime 2, what's your other one?
Other M in general. That was a huge misstep.
I agree, but I don't think it's worse than Samus Returns, because I think if they had followed up on Other M, like, and not went blank for like the last 7 years, or the next 7 years, then maybe. I think Other M's probably number 3. How about that? But yeah, that's.
Well, the reason I disagree with that is because like Other M like put the series in a huge drought. After that, Nintendo was like, okay, we need to like put the series on ice for a moment, rethink everything, because clearly we miscalculated. Whereas Samus Returns, the game obviously underperformed very dramatically.
Yeah.
But literally right after that game finished, like Mercury Steam was brought on again immediately to do Dread. So it's not like the series was put on another hiatus.
That's fair. I think that you could forge a pretty good top 5 of things that Nintendo has done dirty for the Metroid franchise. So maybe we should do an episode on that.
I was about to say, that's a whole episode right there.
Okay. Let's keep it rocking here. This is from A Fallen Apple. And he has got a couple questions here that I'm going to read off all in a row, and they're all great questions. Would you guys... Sorry, let me try that again. What would you guys think of a top-down twin-stick shooter Metroid game? I feel like Nintendo could easily get a third-party developer to create a fun arcade-style game to help and hold us over while we wait for a main game. Yeah, I think that sounds fine.
Yeah, why not? As a small little eShop, cheap complimentary title, why not? Like, I like top-down shooters. I don't go crazy over them, but like they're fun for what they are.
Yeah, I mean it's not like my preferred genre or anything like that. I think I've really only played like Ikaruga, and that's the only one that I can think of off the top of my head. But that game was really fun, and I do feel like there is an opportunity in the Metroid series to do something with Samus' ship, and they've never really explored that a whole lot. I guess Prime 3 a little, but not really, not in the way that we're talking about. So like I think that's like I would be fine with that. If it's like a little eShop title, like you said, or maybe it's like a little mini game or something like that included. I was actually thinking the other day, like, I wonder if they would ever do like a Federation Force style compilation thing again, where like you have like the little soccer game, the little shooter game, the little whatever. Because I think that if you release that at the proper time, like pinball, I think if you release that at the proper time, it could go over well. Like it was just the timing, as we've talked about before, that really kind of sunk Federation Force. So like I think that if they did something like that again, this would fit right in.
Yeah, even though I personally dislike Federation Force regardless, I think most people would have been fine with it if this was in a more active Metroid life cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both agree it's a pretty mediocre game. Mediocre probably at best. But I mean if there's a mediocre Metroid game released in between like Metroid Prime 2 and 3, it's like, okay, well, whatever, we got Prime 3 coming, so this one doesn't have to blow our socks off. Whereas we all kind of know when that game released. So yeah, I would be totally down for that, Apple. And here we go. Speaking of Metroid Prime and its release schedule, if Metroid Prime HD releases this December, do you think that would signify Prime 4 is coming out next year, or Prime 2 and 3 releasing next year with Prime 4 being pushed back to 2024? I'm going to take the lead on this.
Oh, yeah, good. Go for it then.
So, first of all, I think that they should all release together. I think they should just release the Metroid Prime trilogy, and that should be that. Because I think that you are trying to squeeze blood out of a rock if you want to release 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 all for the full price. So I think that they should just not do that at all, actually. Or, if the rumors are to be believed and they're completely remaking Metroid Prime 1, do the Master Chief trilogy gimmick. But I will say, so I think we both kind of agree that Prime 4 is 2024. So I think that Prime 1 in 2023 makes sense. I don't think that you can squeeze 3 releases. Like, I don't think that you could release Prime 1 and then 2 and then 3 within the same calendar year. And I don't think that you want to overload Metroid and release, I think that you'd want to go Prime 1 in 2023, Prime 4 in 2024, and then that's just why I think that they should release the trilogy, because, where else does Prime 2 and 3 fit? Because you're kind of pushing, the end of the Switch's life cycle if we start talking about 2025 and 2026. And I don't think that you want to release more than one Metroid game in, a year. I don't know. What do you think?
So we kind of talked about this at the beginning of the episode, so I won't recap any of that. But I actually, so I'm a firm believer that it's going to be a Prime 1 remaster. I don't think it's going to be the trilogy, and I think that will be coming out this year. Of course, we'll know that
this year, as in 2022.
Yes, I think it. I think it is releasing this year. Well, okay. Again, we don't know that yet, but we'll see how well or poorly.
Well, I mean, it's December or bust. There's no other option at this point.
So there's that. If Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD are revealed, that's a big if. We'll see if that happens. It depends if they're going to be separate or if they're going to be bundled together, which Nintendo doesn't typically bundle their stuff together.
What does your heart tell you?
Well, here's the thing. Look at Super Mario 3D All-Stars. I mean, it's a rare exception, but that's an example of Nintendo upscaling these games, giving it Switch UI, recoded HUD assets and stuff like that, and they released it. Granted, they released it for 6 months and then yeeted it out of the eShop. that was a bit weird, but aside from that, that's a real thing that happened. And maybe if they do minimal work with 2 and 3, I could potentially see them doing something similar with that. And in that case, we get Prime 1 this year, we get a 2-3 bundle next year, and then Prime 4 in 2024. I could see that as a theoretical possibility. Guaranteed? Absolutely not. But a theoretical possibility.
Well, as my father told me, anything is possible, but I don't think that's likely. I think it would be such a bad mistake if they didn't release the trilogy as the trilogy. I think it would be an awful mistake, because I don't think that you're what are you gonna do? Release 4 Metroid games in the span of 3 years? I guess they could bundle 2 and 3 together, but at that point, why don't you just bundle 1, 2, and 3? Right? I don't know. I also don't. I think that Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are coming separately. I think that I could see maybe a world where they're bundled up together, because it's especially Twilight Princess that came out 6 years ago now, so it's not that old. Nintendo asked people to pay full price for this game 6 years ago, so there's not really any DLC that you can add to kind of entice people like all the other Wii U ports. So
well, not even full price, because it was $50. You paid $60 if you got the Wolf Link amiibo for it.
Oh, that's what I paid for it. Yeah, I think they're coming separately. I do.
I could see it. I could easily see it going either way. But I wouldn't. I would be happy if they were bundled together. But I could easily see Nintendo being like,
Yeah. I don't know. I think they're going to be separate, but I do wonder if maybe they're cheaper. What was that game that just came? Detective Famicom Club is an example that comes to mind, where those are 2 different games, part of one overall whole, And I think if you bought both, it was the cost of buying like a regular game. I don't know if I'm optimistic that Nintendo would do that. I feel like they want every last cent that they can pull from us, but I wouldn't say it's impossible either. So
Nintendo is weird because on one hand, patterns are like generally a safe way to predict things, but on the other hand, like if you solely rely on patterns, like Nintendo constantly deviates from those. So you gotta kind of pick and choose like what when you go with it. And Nintendo, they'll do some weird stuff.
oh yeah, you damn right they will. Talk about patterns. You could have predicted as the sun sets that there would have been a direct in June, but here we are. All right, last question from there is a follow up question to this from also a Fallen Apple follow up. If it's the latter, would you be okay with Prime 4 being pushed to 2024, knowing that 2 and 3 are coming next year? Yeah.
I am okay with Prime 4 getting pushed as far back as it needs to be the best game it can possibly be. I am a Metroid fan. I have the patience of a saint.
Yes.
And I literally waited 19 years for Metroid 5, 16 for Metroid Dread. The wait for Prime 4 is nothing.
I will say, I agree with that, obviously. Everybody wants this game to be good. But I do think now that there is actually a little bit of urgency to get this game out while Metroid is hot. Metroid is hot right now. We had the best-selling game. It was nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards. Metroid is probably as hot as it's been maybe ever right now. So I do think that there is some urgency to capitalize on that. So I do think that, if Retro, if they need more employees or they need a bigger budget, I think like you got to give them what they need to get this game out. Like I think this game has to be out by 2024. If it's 2025, unless it's launching on a new Nintendo software, hardware, which could be possible, but I do think that there is some urgency to kind of get this game out, but get it out the right way, not crunching and other shenanigans like that.
Which luckily modern day Nintendo is significantly better on crunching than they were in the early 2000s. So
yeah. Okay, last question from Fallen Apple here. I've always enjoyed the original Metroid creature concept. With them now extinct, do you think the series will be missing out on an essential piece going forward? Well, my friend, I think that these creatures are coming back. I think that there's no reason why they shouldn't. Like, they're extinct now, but like they were also extinct at the beginning of Metroid Fusion, and Metroid Fusion brought him back. Other M brought him back. There is no reason why they cannot come back again. You just have to justify it in your story. And I think that, I think that we're both fans of like the Metroid creatures. So like, it doesn't take much to just like if they were just like, oh yeah, there was another secret laboratory. I'm like, okay, great, let's fight some Metroids.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add there. Like if they want to find a reason to bring Metroids back, they'll do it. I mean, Metroid lore can already get pretty goofy in anyways. I'm sure they can easily just like find some reason to bring him back if they really want him to.
Yeah. This is a great question, and we talked about this before. This is from Shot of Coffee. It's a shout out to you, my friend. He says, new to the podcast and new to Discord, but my question is, how would you feel if Metroid Prime 4 continues from where Metroid Dread left off instead of Metroid Prime 3? I think that would be awesome. I hate that we are pigeonholed into this stupid timeline between Metroid 1 and Metroid 2 with these Prime games. I don't think that we have to stay there. And I think Metroid Prime, as we've talked about before, signifies, at this point in 2022, Metroid Prime signifies a style of gameplay versus a specific time in the timeline or that specific story arc with the creature known as Metroid Prime. So, while I don't think it's very likely, I think that they clearly set up Silex for something that we probably want to pay that off. If Metroid Prime 4 or 5 was like anywhere else, like after Dread or in between Super and Fusion, dude, I'm down. I'm down for that.
Yeah, pretty much fully agree with that. Like, I would love them to get out of this small time frame. I think it made sense when they first started that original first Prime, but now like seeing where the story has evolved since then, and like all of like the story is now so open ended. There's so many different creative directions you can go to. I almost feel like what was once a creative liberty is now really limiting where the Prime series can go by staying in this specific time slot.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll see what they do. I think it's probably pretty likely that this follows the events of Prime 3 and Federation Force. And it's kind of funny that the most significant thing about Federation Force is like that little cinematic Easter egg of Silex in there, and like pretty much nothing else in that game is relevant. But yeah, I mean, for the future, I would even be down if they wanted to remake Metroid Fusion as like a Prime style game. Like, hell yeah, I'd be down for that. All right, let's go to Twitter really quick and let's answer some questions there. We got some more Beam questions. Are you ready for this? This is from
Ready for the beams.
This is from the Metroid Theorist. If you could include your own fan-made beam, missile, bomb, and suit in a Metroid game, what would you call them, and what would their functions be? Dude, this is a heavy-hitting question. I don't know what the names would be. I have no idea what the names would be. And I actually have no idea what like the I think if I could have like created a bomb, it would have been the cross bomb, which has already been created. So I feel like that's great. I don't know about beam. I think that would have to fit into the story. I do think it would be cool if you had like a suit that could interact with the environment around you, like almost I was gonna say like a gravity suit, but not in the way that we know a gravity suit. Maybe one that could like alter your own personal gravity or like change a room or something like that. I think that could be cool. Yeah, I mean, there's so many possibilities that like I don't even know where to begin, but yeah, I've always kind of liked the idea of a suit that interacts with the environment being pretty cool.
So I talked about a little bit about this in our ship episode when me and Dak, we got a little off topic, but I want the opposite of a gravity suit. I want a zero gravity suit for exploring zero G environments in space, because I think that's like an area that Metroid's slowly lacking. That feels like it's a perfect way to implement that into the series.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Especially for the more detective like elements of the games, like when you're scanning the environment and stuff like that. I feel like it's made for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't think of any missiles. I can't think of any bombs. I can't think of any beams. So we kind of what the bed on your question there. But if you have any suggestions, let us know. This is from Saddlezilla. If a future Metroid game had experimental multi-character mechanic where parts of the game required you to switch over to another playable character elsewhere on the map, how would you like it to be designed, and what do you think, or what do you like? This is not worded in the way that I think he needs. What do you want the second playable character to be? So, I think that sounds cool, actually. Like being able to switch like characters and stuff. I think that opens up like a lot of puzzle opportunities. I had a pitch for Metroid 6, which was that a new playable character was introduced. So like I could see maybe something like that. Like if there's a new hunter or something like that. Let's even go to Metroid Prime 4 and say like if you are playing the game and eventually maybe you have to work together with Silex, I would be down to like switch off between those two characters. So I think that mechanic could be pretty cool. About the actual how I would like it to be designed. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a game designer, but I do think that it would be an interesting opportunity to have like a bunch of different puzzles where you can, player A interacts with something over here that lets player B progress a little bit further and vice versa. So it'd kind of be an interesting take on the traditional Metroidvania, genre.
So I don't know how many of our listeners are familiar with randomizers and SGDQ and all that, but there's a really cool mod, and Andy, you might have seen this before. It's a randomizer that combines A Link to the Past with Super Metroid. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And so basically, it's two players that play the game simultaneously. One's playing Link, one's playing Samus, but all of the game's items are mixed and matched in both game worlds. So you can find like the hook shot, for example, in Brinstar, or you can find the power bombs in
Hyrule Castle.
Whatever. Yeah, Hyrule Castle. There you go. Yeah, and so on and so forth. And it's such a cool mod randomizer to see in action. You could totally do something like that. Take out the randomizing element, at least in the base game, and have it so that instead of two players, you have one player switching off. Right. And I could totally see a scenario where you have one character that has to do a bunch of stuff to unlock abilities or unlock a passageway for
Right.
another character that you would switch off to later, and then vice versa, repeat the process. And that's how I always kind of envisioned that two-player swapping mechanic. I think that would be super dope.
Yeah, I think that sounds sweet. Like, I think it's like a really cool like spin on a traditional Metroidvania where like usually in the Metroidvania you have to do like all the grunt work yourself. Like go here, get item that allows you to explore further here, and then you repeat the process. But I think that there's some really interesting opportunities that you could explore.
And also going off that, it's kind of difficult to incorporate multiplayer in 2D Metroid specifically. I think this would be a great way to introduce a co-op mode, so that way, like, you can have one person playing the other character, one person playing Samus.
Yeah. I mean, I'm down for this. I think that it sounds like a good idea. Do I think that Nintendo would do it? I don't know, but I think it would be a lot of fun, definitely. I'd be totally down to see that. Saddlezilla, good idea.
We gotta spam tweet the Mercury Steam staff.
Yeah, everybody tweet at Mercury. Well, hold on. Let's see if we could get a collective list of what we need him to change here. Because, I guess this one isn't for Mercury Steam. This is for Sakurai and his new team. This is from our pal Chunky Beef Bombs. Still the best on Twitter. Samus teamed with Pikachu in Subspace Emissary. In a future Smash story mode / adventure mode, who would you want Samus to team up with, and what
Samus and Simon, obviously. Samus and Simon. Get the Metroidvania crew together.
Okay, that would be cool. Give me Samus and Alucard. You know what? I like Simon. I like Simon, but I want Alucard in the next Smash game. He's the real one.
They just added him to Brawlhalla.
I saw it. Yeah, that's very cool. Let's see. So I think I can hear Dak from wherever in the world where he is being like, "Oh, she should team up with Master Chief, and they should add Master Chief to the next Smash game." That'd be cool.
I agree with that.
Let's just see. Let's limit ourselves to the roster as it is right now. Let's just assume that roster is coming back. I think it would be great to have Captain Falcon and Samus do something. They're both bounty hunters. I actually feel like you could have Captain Falcon show up in like a Metroid game, and it wouldn't feel like completely ridiculous.
I might disagree with that. Maybe vice versa. I could totally see Samus as a guest character in an F-Zero game. I don't know if I could see Falcon appearing in a Metroid game.
Okay, I think you could do it. It would feel weird. I think there's no doubt, but I don't think it would be like absurd. Like a lot of people are talking about like Star Fox and Metroid crossover. Like that would be absurd.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't think F-Zero would be like completely absurd.
I was never on board with the Metroid Star Fox crossover. I always hated that idea.
I like it in like this is a goofy spin-off game that's non-canon
but not as a canon title.
No, definitely not. But I think you could get away with that with Captain Falcon. So those two teaming up makes a lot of sense. You could definitely have Samus and F-Zero also. You're completely right.
Also, going on more Konami characters, Samus and Snake would be such a cool team up as well.
Yeah, dude. When are we going to get another Metal Gear Solid game, man? God damn you, Konami. And Castlevania, too. They're holding both of them hostage.
And Silent Hill. Man, rip those Konami franchise. And poor Contra, man. That last game...
Oh.
Dude. I think it was Rogue Core. That looked like absolute trash.
These guys at Konami... I don't know what they're doing, but they need to sell... They need to sell the rights to Metal Gear Solid to our boy Hideo Kojima, who releases his podcast, by the way. Have you listened to that?
I haven't yet. I have been watching Sakurai's YouTube channel, though. I do need to check out the Kojima podcast, though, for sure.
I downloaded it. I'm going to listen to it on the plane. I'm so excited.
Nice.
That dude is like my hero. He's so awesome. Nobody does what Kojima does. But he needs Metal Gear Solid back, so you're absolutely right. I could totally see Kojima, if he ever got Metal Gear Solid back, being like, yeah, we're going to put Samus in. Sure, it's going to make sense. It'd be like the craziest thing ever, but it'd be awesome.
I feel like Kojima doesn't like want to touch Metal Gear anymore, because like he already like wanted to be done after 2, and then 3 Konami forced him to do that, and then after that it's like, okay, I'm done. And it's like, nope, you're doing more, and then it just kept going, so on and so forth.
I think that this is a sidebar here, but like I think he was in it until Metal Gear Solid 5. Metal Gear Solid 5, I think even like he was excited for that one, but there was definitely something different about Metal Gear Solid 5. Like the game is actually really fun. It's just like not a complete game story wise.
Yeah.
And like I don't know. It was a weird title, probably the weirdest Metal Gear title.
It's a shame because I love 5's gameplay.
Me too.
So much,
it's fantastic.
But, like but again, like you mentioned, like it feels so incomplete. The side quests get very repetitive. The story is, eh.
I think Metal Gear Solid 3 is one of the greatest games of all time. Like, that's such an awesome game. God, I love that game. Damn you, Konami! Release Castlevania and Metal Gear and Silent Hill and Contra too. What else do these guys have?
Their retro collections have been on point at least. Like I'll give some minor credit there.
Yeah, but I mean, they're not making any new games.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like if you're not going to do anything with it, like sell it, make some money off it, and use that to fund your crappy blockchain experiment.
The only new games you're getting is pachinko machines.
God damn it! All right, let's keep on going here on Twitter. I think we only have one more Twitter question here, so let's answer that. And this one comes from, oh god, I don't know how to say this name, Uffy VL something something. So they say, do you think it's possible that Metroid Prime 4 may take place in the Alembic cluster where Silex was first seen? I probably just butchered that, but
the Alembic cluster.
Yeah, yeah, it's possible. Sure.
No, I do not think it's taking place there. I don't.
Okay.
I could see, and this is personally me just fanboying. I don't actually think this is going to happen, but I think it would be really cool if, like, briefly, not the whole game, but briefly, you had to revisit, like, Talon 4 or something like that to find something completely new.
That would be pretty sweet.
And the way the game that inspired this for me is Gears of War 5, actually. Gears of War 5's campaign is one of my favorites in the series. What I love about that is, it tells a brand new story, but it does so by revisiting a ton of iconic locations. In particular, the New Hope facility from Gears of War 2, which still had a ton of mysteries behind it. And the lore that they do in that whole thing is so cool. I absolutely love that sequence. And and if Metroid did something like that for Talon 4, where you're revisiting this planet that you went to before to uncover brand new mysteries that were there the whole time that you didn't even know about, I would pop off so hard.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I maybe not the whole game taking place in that cluster, but I could see like touching on where Silex comes from. I could see that being actually a pretty cool thing. Is like if you had to go back to Talon 4, I think that could be pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's wide open at this point, so why not? All right, last of our Discord questions. The rest of these come from our boy Big Griff, the accursed hunter. So
Olive's coming in hot with the questions.
Dude, this guy is one of the most creative dudes I know when it comes to Metroid. It's unbelievable. So we got a couple in a row here, so let's get it started. Do you think Ravenbeak will return in a future Metroid game that takes place after Metroid Dread? And would you want him to come back, or would you rather him stay dead?
I want him to come back so badly because I feel like Dread barely did anything with him, and his foundation is a really cool character, but they don't build off of any of that. I don't think they're going to bring him back. He's pretty definitively dead by the end of Dread. The X corrupts him. He's on his X corpse, or what's remains of it, I guess, is on an exploded planet. I feel like he's one and done, which is a shame.
I think that I agree. I would like to see him come back. I just don't see any scenario where that's possible. I think that the only scenario I think that is possible is if they had like some sort of flashback in Metroid 6, which I could see, where they're kind of examining Samus getting the Chozo DNA injected into her. Beyond that, yeah, I think it was pretty definitive in Metroid Dread, and I kind of wish it wasn't because I love Ravenbeak. We all love Ravenbeak. But I do think that at least did add some kind of sense of finality to Metroid Dread and like the saga that they were saying. I think that it's hard to say like you're ending the current arc of the series and like your main villain lives till the next game. Maybe they shouldn't have said that. That's another argument. But yeah, I don't think that Ravenbeak could come back or should come back, unfortunately, which is too bad because he's a great character. But I think his send-off was pretty cool in Metroid Dread. So
I'm just disappointed because like he's a pretty flat one-dimensional character, and I feel like there's so much more you can explore with him and make him a lot more interesting other than just a really cool boss fight.
Yeah, and Griff's follow-up question here is kind of on that path. Could you see Ravenbeak and the Mockin Chozo tribe be referenced in any way in a future Metroid Prime game? Yes, I could see that. And I think that could it would be kind of funny actually. It would be kind of like a flip on, because you had the Chozo lore and the space pirate data, and like the space pirates were the bad guys, the Chozo were the good guys. So like I think you could almost flip that, where like you could have Chozo lore, but it's Mockin lore, so it's like kind of getting a glimpse into the bad guys, and it's like this would probably have to be if a Prime game took place after Dread, or at least after Metroid 2. I could see that. Why not? Right? Like typically they've been a little bit separated, but I don't think that they should stay separated. So maybe that's wishful thinking, but yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I agree for sure.
Okay, well, awesome. Let's keep on rocking and rolling here. He has a bunch of other questions here. What about this one? This is a question that's been floating around the fandom for years, but do you think there should be an M-rated Metroid game for a survival horror spin off that could work? Maybe one where you play as Federation troopers, but for a mainline entry, I think it goes on and on and on here. I don't know. It's kind of like, do you need it to be M-rated? Is a game inherently better if it's M-rated? Is a game inherently better if it has like a bunch of gore and stuff like that? I mean, if there was a reason for the game to be rated M, sure, but like I don't know what that reason is or could be. I think that like you don't need to add a bunch of swearing to Metroid, or you don't need to add like a bunch of like gory kills to Metroid. Like that's not really. I feel like at that point you're doing it just to kind of do it. It's like when Deadpool came out, or maybe it was Deadpool 2, whatever one, after Disney bought 20th Century Fox.
The current Deadpool films have all been released under Fox. That had nothing to do with Disney. Deadpool 3 will be the first one.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of, because everybody was making like a huge deal, but like, oh wow, it's gonna be R-rated still, like yay. And I was kind of like, did being R-rated really like add to the movie in a significant way? Like, I feel like there's a lot of movies that Disney's released that are like PG-14 that are like just as funny and just as like, you know what I mean? Like, so
I feel like for Deadpool actually that R rating made a significant difference, but that's like a different topic entirely.
Sure.
I think for Metroid, I totally agree with you. I think if you're just doing an M rated just to be gratuitous and over the top, I think you're completely missing the point of Metroid, and I think it undermines the series as a whole. I'd be fine with an M rating though if it was just with more subtle aspects. Like I think a good example is Batman Arkham Knight, for example. That is an M-rated game that is certainly not gratuitous. There's not tons of swearing and over-the-top gore and violence, but it's an M-rated title nonetheless for very subtle instances where it does push past that that teen rating a little bit. Will Nintendo do that? I highly doubt that. Absolutely not. But in a theoretical scenario, I'd be fine with something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we're talking like a mainline Metroid game versus like a spin-off, if there's like a survival horror spin-off or whatever, okay, I'm okay with that. And Griff kind of mentioned like a game where you might play some Federation troopers or something like that. Sure, I could be okay with that. And like maybe there's something stalking them, or like even if they wanted to remake Metroid Fusion and they have the SAX be like really scary and imposing, and like there's something that warrants it. But yeah, I mean, like I don't think that you need to inherently have your game rated M. I kind of remember when I was a kid in junior high, my buddy would not buy CDs unless there was like the parental advisory sticker on it. And I was just like, oh, yeah, me neither. I don't listen to anything without that. And like looking back, that's so silly.
I'm cool. What are you talking about?
I was listening to like the Backstreet Boys, Backstreet's Back, which I still listen to because it's a banger.
Backstreet Boys are awesome. I will not tolerate any Backstreet Boys slander.
Yeah, Backstreet Boys are so sick. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, so there you go. All right, another question here. Griff asks, if a Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion remake end up happening and they have their equivalent to Samus Returns Chozo Memories or Dread's Chozo Archives, what would you like to see? I think that for Fusion, a detailing of the Federation building the Metroid program would be really cool. Some stills about them kind of doing that and how they were able to do that, I think could be quite fascinating. Or maybe I don't know. Maybe it could be something with like all the other SAXs on the ship, like the 10 SAX or whatever. I don't know actually for Super. I don't have any. Maybe it could be like the Space Pirates rebuilding their base. Maybe. What do you think?
I think you could go back a little bit further. I think a great one for Super Metroid would be to depict the Space Pirates invading Zebes like before the events of the first game, because
Yeah.
we
Okay.
really only the closest depiction we have to that is in the Metroid manga, which even though I'm pretty sure the manga itself isn't canon, that specific event where the Space Pirates invade Zebes is still canon. I think that would be a good opportunity to explore that.
Yeah, I could be down with that for sure. Um, you could also there's like a lot of things that you could do. Actually, this isn't really the question he was asking, but I kind of pitched this about a year ago, maybe more at this point, and now that I said it, I really want to see it. But like, man, I would love to play as Ridley at the beginning of Super Metroid and like have a little like section in the Sarah space station, like you could fight Samus at the end instead of like vice versa. I think that'd be so cool. But
Just like a little kaiju segment where you're just
Mm.
wrecking havoc on the space station, just tearing apart all these one health bar NPCs.
Those poor bastards. That could get you an M rating right there. All right, let's keep it going here. There's another awesome one from Griff. Between a new Metroid game and remakes, what would you prefer Nintendo focus on? I'd rather Nintendo go with new Metroid games for a good while. Well, I mean, like, yeah, obviously. I think that we all want new Metroid games. I think that you have to ask, like, who's making the remakes, right? Like, on the Zelda side, for example, like, Nintendo works on the new Zelda games and has a couple other studios, like Grezzo or, what's the other one? Tantalus or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those guys handle the remakes. So like having one doesn't detract from the other, and so I think that you probably want to do the same thing with Metroid. I don't know. I feel like if you were to tell me that like we have 100 people that work at Retro Studios, 90 are working on Metroid Prime 4, and 10 are working on porting the Metroid Prime trilogy, I'd be okay with that. I think you could also tell me like we've got Mercury Steam and we're going to focus on remaking Metroid Fusion next. I think I'd be okay with that too. Obviously, I want a new Metroid game, but like, I do think that there is some value to remaking the old games, particularly if they can bridge you to like your next game. Like Samus Returns, for example, like they remade that, they improved on it, they got it into the hands of so many new people, and then they set up Metroid Dread in that game as well. So, I mean, generally speaking, of course, I'd rather new games, but I don't hate remakes or anything like that either.
Well, and another thing you have to consider as well is like eventually you're gonna run out of remakes until the point where you're pulling a Last of Us Part One, for example, and remaking a remaster.
I think they should
So-
actually remake Zero Mission at some point in the future. I think that would be great.
I think eventually maybe you could do it, but I don't think we've quite hit that yet. Zero Mission is still mwah, in my opinion. But regardless, I actually think a really good model for this is the Resident Evil games. You have one mainline Resident Evil, and then in between the next mainline game, you have maybe a remake or two, maybe a spin-off before the next mainline game.
Yeah.
And they're all. And it keeps the cycle going constantly. It makes the wait between the mainline entries feel much shorter than they really are. I think personally that's how you can handle Metroid in a really healthy way.
Yeah, I agree. That sounds great. And to be honest, that's what we've seen in Zelda. Like, you have I mean, not lately because we haven't had Breath of the Wild 2, but like you'd have Skyward Sword HD, which is a port, but then Age of Calamity before that, which is new, and then I guess you didn't have like Link's Awakening, which is a remake, and then Breath of the Wild, which is new, and then Twilight Princess HD. So you know what I mean? There's like a nice kind of balance there.
You also had Hyrule Warriors Definitive, Cadence of Hyrule.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that kind of release schedule is fine, and I'm down with that. We have the last two questions are also about remakes, so we'll keep on the same train here. Other than Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, are there any other Metroid games you'd like to see get a remake / graphical overhaul?
Metroid Prime Pinball Baby. Let's go. Make it happen.
Yeah, I can think of one. Metroid Prime Hunters, because I think this game's horrible to play now, unfortunately. And I think it was horrible to play when it came out, and I know everyone's angry or whatever, but like I'm sorry, but I think that the stylus controls are just like so awful. So I think if I had to pick, I'd say that one because I think the game doesn't look good anymore. It doesn't play good anymore. But would I want it now? I don't think so. Not really, especially because there's like so little to the actual game that I couldn't see them releasing it as like a new game, maybe like a new concept or a new style of Hunter's game. So that one comes to mind.
I'd be fine with the Hunter's remake, but honestly, I'd much rather just have like a dedicated Hunter's sequel just to explore that concept.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, there's
way,
nothing to that game. Like, it's so, you know, as a multiplayer game in 2006 is great, especially considering where it's on, you know, hardware wise and whatever. As a single player game, it's probably the weakest Metroid title. If not the weakest, then like the second weakest, only behind Federation Force. You know what? That's my other answer is Federation Force. And by graphical update, I mean change of graphics, like completely.
I mean, Federation Force, I think, should be rebuilt from the ground up because I think I think the concept is super cool. I've always wanted a Galactic Federation focused game. I just think pretty much every aspect of it was executed the incorrect way.
Yes. You know what? Yeah. I mean, other than that, like, and we're talking in Hunters and Federation Force, like basically just like same concept but completely rebuild the game. Other than Fusion, I think Fusion desperately needs a remake, and I think it's going to get one. Other than that, like, there's no... Like, I think Metroid for NES and Metroid 2 are obvious answers. I don't really think you need to remake Super. I don't really think you need to remake Metroid Prime 1, 2, or 3. Maybe Other M. Like, you know...
Do the Andy Spiteri story pitch, bro.
Hell yeah.
I'd buy that.
Even if they did this, if they released Other M and they got rid of the goofy sideways controls and like maybe they just had like a designated button that switches you to first person or something, like that would make that game a lot more playable. And maybe if we really want to dream big, if we really want to shoot for the stars, we could get a new localization or new story bits. That would never happen, but I don't know. That's, I don't know. There's not a lot of other games that need to be remade, to be honest. So
to be fair, there aren't a lot of Metroid games in comparison to, like, Nintendo's other big series. So.
Yeah, very true. Okay, last question here, and then we'll bounce out of here, Doom. Mercury Steam originally went to Nintendo with a Fusion remake pitch. Would Nintendo make a Fusion remake before a Super Metroid remake? Yes, they would.
I think so, yeah.
They would, they will. Yeah.
I do think eventually Super Metroid is inevitably going to get a remake, but much like you, I don't think that game needs to be remade at all.
Yeah.
Even Fusion, while I prefer Fusion to Super Metroid, I think Fusion definitely needs a remake over Super, for sure.
I can't believe there are people in this world that prefer Fusion to Super Metroid. But I
like the story, I like the vibes.
Joking aside, I agree. There are so many... Like, you look at Super Metroid and, like, what are you going to add? Like, new graphics, new music? Yeah, like, that sounds great. The slide, that sounds great. But, like, it's still, like, such a good game to play. Like, it's almost like the perfect video game. And then you play Metroid Fusion, and, like, you hear the music, which is not helped by the Game Boy Advance sound chips or whatever.
I think the music is still awesome, but obviously that we very much disagree on Game Boy Advance.
Well, I mean, the music itself is fine, but like the way that it's coming out of those speakers is like, I think it sounds horrible.
I mean, it hinders it, but I don't think it's enough to make it sound bad. It's not like...
Okay, well,
I don't know.
Take that out. You look at Fusion, you could definitely add voice acting to eliminate all the times that you have to stand still, listen to Adam go on and on and on. I think that if you did a remake... You get rid of the stupid, like, is your objective clear? Like, get rid of that. We can significantly... I think that the BSL should be expanded, like, by a bit, so that you can, like, go around and explore a bit more free-form-wise. I think that Fusion needs it more.
I agree. Like, even though I prefer Fusion, like, Fusion has so many areas where that game could be improved, whereas Super Metroid, the only, like... quality of life improvement I really feel like would be a necessity.
Missiles.
Would be changing the sub weapons and all that. But otherwise I think what else do you really need to do?
Yeah, I mean, both of them actually have a map problem where I'm willing to forgive both of them because they're so old, but like I hate that you can't switch areas unless like you can't view the map for if you're in sector 5, you cannot view the map for sector 4 unless you're in sector 4, which drives me nuts. and that's the same thing for Super. So yeah, obviously there would be some map updates to both, but yeah, I think that Fusion could come earlier, should come earlier, will come earlier. So there you go. That's it. That's all of our questions. We're done. We're out of here, baby.
We did it.
That's great. Yeah, we answered all the questions that we have. I was about to say we're going to take next week off, but we recorded an episode a couple weeks ago that is going to be releasing, and with our luck, it's going to be there's going to be a Nintendo Direct that comes out like the day before, and we're going to be blathering on about the mapping Metroid area. But hey, we're willing to take that L if that means that we could get that Nintendo Direct. So there we go.
The sacrifices that we make for you. You know,
That's
it's
right.
a thankless job, but someone's got to do it.
That's right. Doom, always a pleasure. This is a great episode. Thank you, my man.
Yeah, we got some good questions this week. Like I had a lot of fun chatting about this.
Yep, fantastic. Okay, well, that's going to do it for us. We are going to get out of here. Of course, we want to encourage you guys to check us out over on Twitter at Spiteri316, at Doominal and at Omega Metroid Pod. OmegaMetroid.com. Baby, this has all the maps, the guides, the news, the fan creations, the original content that you could ever dream of. And of course, there is even more on Patreon as well. We got bonus episodes. We got ROM hack reviews going on over there. Lots of good stuff. So if you got a few extra bucks in your pocket and want to help support the website and the podcast, feel free to head over to Patreon. That's the best way to help us out. And what you can do for free is, of course, go to wherever you get your podcasts. Like, subscribe, share, recommend, review, all that good stuff. We appreciate it all. We are going to get out of here. Until next week, everybody. Actually, I will see you guys in a couple weeks. So have a good couple weeks while I'm away, Doom.
For sure. We'll hold down the fort for you, Andy, Dak, and I. And we'll hopefully be talking about some direct announcements as well.
One can only hope. All right. Until then, everybody, take care.